Salvē, amiche, and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at John chapter 6, verses 11 through 13. But first, last time in the book of John. Here's our rubric. Let's get started. Accepit ergo panes Jesus et cum gratias egisset distribuit discum bentibus similiter ex piscibus quantum volebant. Ut autem impleti sunt, dixit discipulis suis, colligite quae superaverunt fragmenta ne periant. Collegerunt ergo et impleverunt duodecim caffinos fragmentorum, ex quinque panibus hodeiacis quae superfuerunt his qui mandu caverunt. That was much easier to read than the Greek was. So our very first word is our verb, which is always nice. So acipio. Oh, forgot to remove the head. Sorry about that. Accipit. So it, this is from acipio, accipere, capi, which is that form. So with the E, here's expecting it present, stupid me. With E and the IT, that's going to be the perfect stem, third singular, active, indicative. Ergo, panes with epsilon sigma. Jesus is already our subject. We don't need to parse him. So panes is the object, and it is accusative, then plural, masculine. Et cum, so we're taking a look at gratias. So this is gratia, gratiae. As is the accusative plural form, so it can't be the object of cum, so cum is introducing a cum clause. So we take a look at our verb to figure out what type of cum clause it is. If it's indicative, then it's a temporal clause. If it's subjunctive, then it's circumstantial, adversative, or that other one that I can't remember. Egisset, with the ISSE on the perfect stem of ago, is the pluperfect stem of the subjunctive, the T as our personal ending, so we have a circumstantial, adversative, or causal. I don't remember. But suffice it to say, this is not temporal, which I think in the Greek we have a participle, so it could be temporal with that. But in this case, I'm still going to translate it when for circumstantial, but understand this is not time. So in the circumstances of him having given thanks, distribuit. So this is distribuo, distribuere, distribui. I'm assuming are the principal parts. Forgot the word there for a moment. So it could be either present or it could be perfect tense. So we take a look at the Greek, though we have dia doken with that E shape right there. The epsilon tells us that in the Greek, at least, it is the aorist tense, which if you recall corresponds to the Latin perfect. So I'm going to treat this one as a perfect, but third singular. And it means, of course, to distribute. Discumbentibus, IBUS, with a verb of distribution, of handing out. It wants an indirect object, and it's taking. Adverb right there tells us new clause, so it has to take our previous object according to the sense of the sentence. So panes, we should assume again, accusative to the dative indirect, can't be ablative. And then masculine because it's a crowd, including men. So discumbentibus, if you recall, means to recline as if at table to eat. Similiter, iter, off of a third declension adjective, is going to be the adverbial form. So likewise, or similarly, also is what et has to mean after a similiter. Ex, prepositional phrase with piscibus. Quantum is the wrong form to be part of the prepositional phrase, so we close it there. This then is plus ablative, plural, and then the fish are masculine, just like the bread. Piscis, piscis. Quantum meaning however much. And that's going to be accusative, singular. Probably neuter, or yeah, it's actually just an adverb. That I don't recall, sorry. I will actually check that and be right back. Adverb is correct. Quantum. And then volebant, B-A-N-T, is our third person, plural, imperfect tense, active, indicative for an action that continues so imperfectively, whereas each of these previous ones was a aorist. Though discumbentibus, the NT is actually not imperfect, it is not aorist, that is, it is a present active participle. Probably should have included that. Into verse 12 then, we start with an ut, so we immediately want to see if our verb is a subjunctive in case we have a ut clause, a purpose clause. Autem, now, impleti sunt, there is our verb. These two together is the periphrastic perfect passive with sunt, confirming that. I is going to be nominative, plural, masculine, plural, also because the sunt there. Perfect tense, as I've already said. Passive and indicative. So implet os. This comes from a verb that we're going to have a little bit later, impleo maybe. That it means to fill up. So without the subjunctive, this is just telling us, again, so a sort of circumstantial situation. As they were filled, dixit, going back to our previous singular subject, it, don't need to parse that, it's common enough, but Jesus is speaking, and then who is he speaking to? Well, discipulis, that is, for dative, plural, masculine on the second declension noun, and then suis, the reflexive, possessive adjective, so his disciples, and then we enter direct speech. Collegite, this ite, or really the te addition to the stem, can only be an imperative. Note that we get the word college from this, and we probably get the word college, I should say, because it's not spelled quite the same, of course, but this means to a gathering together. So you all gather together. What are you gathering together? Why, this neuter plural is the only option. Accusative, plural, neuter. Superauerant, erunt, with that V is then going to be the perfect stem, third person plural, perfect, active, indicative, and actually, hang on a second. It's possible that the quae is not accusative. As we take a look at fragmenta, which is the thing to which quae refers, fragmenta is neuter, like quae must be. So this is plural, neuter. But the options, just as with quae, are either nominative or accusative. Colligite wants a direct object, but superauerant wants a subject. Now, quae is going to be introducing a subordinate clause. It can be the object of the main verb sometimes, though honestly that is I would think that would be an unusual thing, and I can't think of instances where that is the case. So instead, I slipped into an error and assumed that this one's going to be nominative, whereas fragmenta is going to be accusative as the object of colligite. So our relative clause is sandwiched between our main verb and the object of the main verb in the main clause. So gather the fragmenta which, as the subject of superauerant, abound, overflow, remain. Though remain is not a word that we should use because that we would have went moneo for that. And then the end of verse 12, ne, a ut clause, but without the just the ne, so it's a negative ut clause. Pereant, note that we have the ea from our subjunctive indicators on the present stem. We beat a giant, or whatever the one that you learned. So the ea, inti, third person plural, can only be the present stem because that's the only one that forms with these subjunctives. Active, subjunctive with the ne, so lest they perish, the word meaning what it looks like. Into verse 13 then, collegerunt, erunt, perfect stem, so we don't need to parse that again. Ergo, and since it's moved into the plural, it's going to go to the discipulis as the subject, as the next most recent bread. Kind of backed myself into a linguistic corner. As the most recent plural possible subject that's not bread. There we go. Ergo, and Therefore, also impleverunt, another perfect stem with the ERU and T, and this one's going to want to take a direct object. This one assumes the previous direct object Jesus mentioned, so this one is taking duodecim, I am kophinos, omicron, OS for accusative, plural, masculine. Duodecim doesn't decline, so it just modifies kophinos. And then fragmentorum, ORUM for genitive, plural, neuter, we already know. Ex, prepositional phrase for continuing this. Quinque doesn't decline, but panibus does, IUS, ex taking the ablative, plural, masculine, but note also that we have for diakiis, IS for another dative or ablative. In this case, it's going to be ablative, not dative, plural, and I don't remember the gender. Let me check the previous page. Or is it just an adjective? I think it's just an adjective. So, hordiakis, modifying panibus, closing the prepositional phrase, and then we can enter a relative clause with quae, that AE can't match panibus at all because panibus is masculine. Masculine doesn't take those forms. Instead, this is going to be going back to fragmenta, which is neuter, which is also the thing that we know already, superfuerunt, though we have superauerunt. So superfuerunt, whoa, this is something I forgot to look up. So superauerunt means abound. This comes from super, probably sum, so supersum, superesse, superfui, the perfect stem of sum. And this would just be another way of saying are in excess, because it is being over what there was previously. And then one has to accede to a dative in Latin, which we find with his from hic, haec, hoc. This is dative or ablative, but in this case it can only be the dative as the dative of reference. Plural, masculine, as we know, qui, and also the crowd has at least 5,000 men, so then the entire thing is referred to as masculine. And then manducaverunt, another perfect, which we don't need to parse, and this is the word for masticate, to eat. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in its own context. Therefore Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, distributed to those reclining. Likewise also from the fish, however much they were wishing. Now as they have been sated, he said to his disciples, gather, which abound, fragments, lest they be lost. Therefore they gathered and filled 12 baskets of fragments from 5 barley loaves, which have been to those who have eaten. And I've not said abound or remain because this is from sum rather than supero, which has a different meaning, even though they're very similar to each other. But that's a little bit awkward in English, but it does make the clear distinction between two different verbs in these locations. Though I think in the Greek, it's the same word. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you have a very good day. Bye-bye.